5 million pickup trucks exposed. Discover the heartwarming reason prices are rapidly plummeting. In Willow Creek, trucks aren't just machines. They're lifelines, symbols of hard work and community spirit. But now, each day at Jim Reynolds' garage feels heavier. The steady rhythm of engines and laughter from loyal customers has faded into silence. The harsh reality of discount dealerships turning the market upside down hangs over him like a storm cloud. As he looks out at his children playing in the backyard, their laughter puncturing the stillness, he feels the weight of a future he desperately wants for them slipping away. Jim gives an affectionate glance to Sarah, his wife. She is always the anchor in the storm, her unwavering support a beacon through his darkest hours. "We'll find a way, Jim," she says, her voice steady, confidence radiating from her. Together, they've nurtured a home built on love, dreams, and hard work, everything his father taught him. The tools on the wall are more than mere objects. They represent countless hours of sweat and grit, just like the families who walked through his door over the decades that he focuses on the headlines, the tragic fall of local pride. Pickup trucks getting cheaper by the day. Jim shakes his head in disbelief. He knows how much those trucks mean, how each dent and scratch tells a story of resilience and craftsmanship. But now, the allure of shiny new models from far-off dealerships threatens to erase that. He can't shake off the feeling of inadequacy as he runs his fingers across the grease-stained workbench, reminding himself of the skills that made his shop a cherished cornerstone. But then, a spark ignites in his heart. He stumbles upon whispers of a grassroots movement urging folks to repair rather than replace their trucks, a celebration of craftsmanship and community. It lights a fire in him. Perhaps his talents could be part of a revival. The ease of fixing broken parts over replacing them rings loud with the values he holds dear. He envisions pop-up workshops showcasing local talent and the beauty of hard work. But as he shares his ideas with neighbors, skepticism clouds their responses. Doubt if anyone would care about a local mechanic when flashy deals are just around the corner. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Driven by purpose, Jim pushes through the doubts. Better or worse, he knows he can't stand idle. Town leaders, overhearing the buzz about his workshops, threaten to shut them down, a chilling warning. Tensions spike at community meetings, but he finds strength in the unlikely allies rallying behind him. Retired veterans, young mechanics, artists. Their heartbeats gear up the fight, reminded that it's more than just his garage at stake. It's about the very identity of Willow Creek, the spirit of labor, love, and community. As the sun sets, illuminating the faces filled with passion and conviction, Jim stands at a precipice. With a heart full of hope and uncertainty, he asks himself, can they truly reclaim the spirit of Willow Creek against the odds? The answer waits in the faces of his neighbors, reflecting a burning desire for change, unity, and a future worth fighting for. The next morning, Jim awoke to the sound of birds chirping, but the usual joy of a new day was muted by the shadows of uncertainty lingering in his mind. He stepped into the kitchen, where Sarah was sipping her coffee, the steam swirling around her like hope in the air. "Big day today?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with encouragement. Jim nodded, his heart racing. He had organized a meeting at the town hall, hoping to rally support for his workshops and spread the word about the importance of preserving local craftsmanship. It was a chance to ignite passion in their community, and he could almost feel the heat of potential change. As he prepared for the meeting, he glanced out the window to see his children playing with the neighborhood kids. Their carefree laughter echoed in his heart, pulling him away from the doubts that threatened to engulf him. What kind of future will they have? He pondered, the thought striking him hard. When Jim arrived at the town hall, the atmosphere was charged. A mix of older residents and young families dotted the room, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. He stood in front of them, his hands trembling slightly as he gripped the podium. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steadying with each word. I'd like to talk about something very close to my heart, our trucks, our community. He watched their faces shift. From mild interest to cautious optimism, it was like watching a flower bloom slowly. Jim poured out his vision, painting a picture of pop-up workshops where they could learn to repair rather than replace. He highlighted the skills they could pass down to the next generation, the priceless know-how that was part of their heritage. But as he spoke, Jim noticed the furrowed brows of a few town leaders in the back, their arms crossed tightly, clearly unconvinced. "Time is changing, Jim," one of them called out, breaking the flow of his thoughts. "People want new. Why cling to what is old?" Jim felt a wave of frustration, but he took a deep breath. "Why all know that feeling when you fix something, and it feels like part of you is restored. Those repairs hold stories, your father's hands on the steering wheel, your first road trip. It's not just about trucks. It's about our stories." The room stirred. A few heads nodded in agreement. Just as Jim thought he was making ground, another voice from the corner piped up. "But who will even come to these workshops?" A younger mechanic, doubt clouding his eyes. The air tinged with tension, but Jim's heart didn't waver. He had to reach these people. "What if I told you we can bring the community together? We can make it a festival, a celebration of our craftsmanship. A weekend full of laughter, skills, and family." His words hung in the air, lingering like a challenge, waiting for the crowd to respond. Hope mingled with fear in their eyes as Jim stood there, vulnerable yet resolute. One by one, people began to speak, sharing their stories of trucks that had been in their families for generations. Slowly, the walls of doubt began to crack. Encouragement began flowing in. Ideas bounced around like fireflies in the night. But then the doors swung open, and in walked the town leaders, the same faces that had dismissed Jim's idea. Their presence cast a shadow, and Jim's heart sank. Would this be a breakthrough, or would they extinguish the flame of hope he'd just begun to kindle? As the meeting progressed, the tension escalated. The town leaders exchanged hurried glances, and a palpable discomfort settled over the crowd. Just when it seemed things would take a turn for the worse, an unexpected ally, an elderly veteran, stepped forward. "Our trucks deserve better than to be junked and forgotten. We owe it to ourselves to stand together." Jim locked eyes with Sarah from across the room, her expression bouncing between hope and determination. Could they turn the tide against the growing opposition? Would the community embrace the revival of their shared narrative? With inner resolve mounting, Jim gripped the podium tighter, ready for whatever challenge awaited, knowing the spirit of Willow Creek was far from over. The murmurs in the room changed, a subtle shift that pulled Jim's attention back. The elderly veteran's voice had added weight, but the town leaders were not easily swayed. "What do you mean, stand together?" One of the leaders sneered, pushing back against the wave of support. "You want us all to take our weekends and fix up old rust buckets instead of moving forward? This town needs progress, not nostalgia." Jim's heart raced. He wanted to shout, to defend every man and woman who had poured sweat and love into their trucks. But the words lodged in his throat, turning into an ache of frustration. Instead, he took a deep breath, seeking the calm amidst the storm. "Progress doesn't mean we abandon who we are," he replied, his voice calm but firm. "Tradition and innovation can coexist. We can build a future that honors our past while moving forward." The crowd buzzed with life, the air thick with tension and possibility. Jim could see a flicker of recognition in some faces. It was a connection. But would it be enough? A young woman in the front stood up, her face flushed with determination. "I grew up wrenching on my dad's old truck. Those memories are part of me. Young people like me, we want to learn those skills and carry them on. It's not just about fixing trucks, it's about community." Her voice rang out like a bell across the room. Somewhere in the back, Jim could see a few nodding in agreement, and he felt a spark ignite inside him. Exactly. Jim seized the moment, feeling the energy swell. Imagine a weekend where everyone comes together, not just to learn, but to celebrate our lives, our families, our very roots. We can revive the spirit of Willow Creek. Jess, the mechanic with doubt in his eyes, seemed to soften a bit. "But what if it fails?" he asked quietly, vulnerability creeping into his voice. "What if nobody comes?" Jim stepped down from the podium, moving closer to the crowd, making eye contact with each person one at a time. "What if it doesn't? What if it turns into something we never anticipated? Something that brings joy, laughter, and above all, connection? Isn't that worth the chance? As he spoke, a quiet determination settled over the room. Jim could feel it, a ripple of hope spreading like warm sunlight after a long, cold winter. The town leaders remained stoic, but their hardened expressions seemed to crack. Just a little. An elderly woman's hand shot up. I might not know much about fixing trucks, but I can bring a pie. What is a festival without pies? Laughter bubbled, breaking the heavy atmosphere. Smiles began to spread, the walls of resistance starting to crumble. And I could lead a workshop on painting. My granddad taught me. Another voice chimed in. The energy blossomed, laughter pouring into the space, lifting spirits. Jim felt it build within himself too, the community revitalizing, pushing aside the burdens of doubt. But from the back, the town leaders exchanged quiet words, plotting against the growing tide of support. Jim knew they wouldn't give up easily. You all feel it, don't you? He said, raising his voice once more, this time infused with raw emotion. The hope, the unity. Together, we can make this happen. As heads nodded, as hands rose, Jim caught sight of Sarah, her eyes shining with pride and belief. In that moment, he knew they were not just fighting for trucks, but for every story interwoven into the fabric of Willow Creek. Just as the vibrancy in the room reached its peak, the head leader stepped forward, a resolute expression on his face. This isn't over. We'll see you at the next council meeting. Be ready for an argument. A chill crept through Jim's chest. Would their efforts truly be enough? Would the community's spirit shine brighter than the resistance ahead? As the meeting saw its close, Jim's heart pounded with anticipation. The real fight for Willow Creek was about to begin. Would they band together, or would the town remain shackled to fear? With resolve, he glanced at the faces around him, steeling himself for what lay ahead. He could almost feel that hopeful fire twinkling in the air, ready to ignite. But would they embrace it or force it to flicker away? The real test was yet to come. The following weeks were a whirlwind of planning and strategizing. Jim could feel the excitement and trepidation in the air, like static before a storm. Posters went up around town announcing the weekend festival, and every time he caught a glimpse, his heart swelled with pride. Yet the shadow of the town leaders loomed, their threat hanging over him like an unseen weight. At the coffee shop, he met with Sarah, Jess, and a few others to map out the activities. We need to make this festival more than just trucks, Jim said, a spark igniting in his chest. It should highlight everything that makes this town special: the food, the stories, the people. Sarah nodded eagerly. What if we add a storytelling corner? We can invite the older folks to share their stories about growing up here, their memories tied to this place. I love that. Jess chimed in, looking up from his notepad filled with ideas. It'll remind everyone why they love Willow Creek in the first place. As they brainstormed, laughter filled the cafe. Each idea was met with enthusiasm, and soon, what was once a haze of fear transformed into a vibrant tapestry of possibility. With every passing day, they chiseled away at the doubts, carving out a festival that could unite them all. But even as the team worked tirelessly, Jim couldn't shake the feeling that the town leaders were plotting something else. He saw the small crowds at the council meetings, the smirks exchanged among the opposing members, then the dismissive gestures towards the festival plans. It left an uncomfortable knot in his stomach. One afternoon, while he was changing the oil on his truck, he caught a glimpse of Mrs. Connolly, the town's oldest resident, as she ambled by. Her eyes sparkled with life, though her face bore the markings of a long life. She stopped, resting on her cane. They're not going to stop you, are they? Jim wiped his hands on a rag. I'm not backing down. We're doing this for all of us, Mrs. Connolly. That's the spirit, she smiled, though there was a flicker of concern behind her eyes. You remind me of the kids who fought to keep our school open years ago. They believed in something sharper than fear. Her words resonated. I just wish everyone could see what I see. This isn't just about fixing trucks. It's about saving our history. As the days crept closer to the festival, Jim noticed more people in town engaging with the idea. He spotted neighbors gathering on porches, discussing what they'd bring to contribute. Old friends reunited, laughter echoing down the streets. But in dark corners, whispers followed, solicitous rumors led by the town leaders who feared the community finding its voice. When the day of the festival finally arrived, the sweet, heady aroma of fresh pies mixed with engine grease filled the air, and families flocked to the park. A sea of smiles spread across faces like wildfire. Jim watched as kids darted between booths while the elderly shared stories, their eyes lighting up with cherished memories. The flickers of hope ignited into flame. But higher up, in the shadowy corners of the town council, something sinister was boiling. The leader who had initially dismissed Jim stepped out from the crowd, scanning for weakness. Jim could sense that the leader was not one to let the festival thrive without trying to exert control. As the festival unfolded, Jim could see the division manifesting a choice that would determine the future of Willow Creek. Would their joyous fight stand strong against the looming threat? The sun sank low, casting a golden light and feeling almost surreal, wrapping every emotion into one glaring question. Could they protect the very soul of their town from those who would rather see it fade away? The sun dipped lower, creating a warm glow that set the park aglow, almost as if Willow Creek itself was celebrating. Jim felt the energy around him, a tangible excitement that pulsed through the crowd. Children dashed across the grass, their laughter mingling with the gentle hum of music from the nearby gazebo. For a moment, he allowed himself to bask in the joy of the festival. It was a victory, however small, against the looming specter of the town leaders. Yet, in the back of his mind, that feeling of unease lingered. He scanned the crowd for the familiar figure of the town council leader, but it was hard to spot anyone through the jubilant throng. His eyes fell on Sarah, who was leading a group of kids in a craft activity. She wore an infectious smile. Jess was at the grill, flipping burgers with a passion that seemed to draw people over like moths to a flame. This moment should have been perfect, but just as he settled into the warmth of the day, a commotion broke out near the main stage. "Hey, what is going on?" Jim hurried toward the noise. As he approached, he could see several townsfolk gathered, voices raised in protest. At the front was Councilman Mercer, red-faced and gesturing wildly. "This festival is a sham," he shouted, the tight line of his mouth revealing the anger that simmered beneath the surface. "It's nothing more than a distraction from the real issues facing our town." A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. Jim's heart sank. This was what he feared, the council stepping in to suppress their newfound unity. "No," Jim shouted, stepping forward. The crowd turned, startled by his boldness. "This festival is about keeping our town alive. It's about all of us. We've come together to share our stories and celebrate what makes Willow Creek special." Some folks nodded, while others looked uncertain, eyes flitting between Jim and the councilman. Jim could feel the stakes rising. Would they rally behind him, or would fear take over? Mercer's expression twisted into a sneer. "Don't be naive, Jim. This is just a ploy to keep people distracted while real issues go unaddressed." His voice cut like a knife through the joy that wrapped around them just moments before. "No," Sarah shouted back. "We've always tackled our issues head-on, and we're not going to let you strip away our community spirit." The crowd began to murmur louder, emboldened by their own rising voices. Jim sensed their courage around him, but fear flickered in many eyes as well. What would it take to shake off the oppressive shadow of the council? He stepped closer to the crowd. "This is our festival. It's our chance to be heard. If we stand together, we can create something beautiful that lasts, not just for today, but for generations." From the back, Mrs. Connolly's frail voice broke through. "Jim's right. I've seen towns die when fear devours them. Let us not let that happen here. We deserve our stories to be told." A ripple of agreement surged through the crowd as they began to nod and murmur in agreement. Hope filled Jim's heart, the flicker igniting into flames. But even as he rallied them, Jim sensed a flicker of hesitation in the air. Could they truly stand against the stronghold of disapproval and threats? Would his voice be enough to combat the fear the council had instilled? As the crowd quieted, their faces upturned, it hit him. They were at a crossroads, not just for the festival, but for the very identity of Willow Creek. In that moment, with the stakes higher than ever, he wondered if they, as a community, could truly find their strength to carve their own future. And then, from the shadows behind the councilman, he saw a figure emerging, someone he never expected to stand against the tide. Who would choose to speak up? What would they reveal? The figure stepped into the dimming light, a blend of determination and uncertainty etched on their features. Jim squinted, straining to catch a glimpse. It was Tom Collins, the once quiet librarian, whose soft-spoken nature had always been overshadowed by bolder voices. Jim had never imagined Tom would take such a stand. "Tom," Jim called out, encouragement lacing his voice. "What do you have to say?" The crowd parted slightly, and Tom shuffled forward, his usual reticence replaced by an unexpected strength. He took a deep breath, his fingers trembling slightly at his sides. Jim could see the conflict in Tom's eyes, the weight of his words pressing down like lead. I never wanted to get involved in town politics," Tom began, his voice shaky but gaining strength with every word. "But I've seen how our stories connect us. This festival, it's about our memories, our dreams. It's a beacon of hope, especially for the kids who need to know that their stories matter." A hush fell over the crowd, absorbing Tom's heartfelt sentiment. Their faces softened, transformed by the vulnerability he displayed. Jim felt the ripple of unity surging around him as murmurs of agreement echoed through the park. "But Mercer is right about one thing," Tom continued, his eyes locking onto the councilman. "We have real issues to face. But instead of tearing each other down, we should lift each other up. We need to talk together, as a community. Not just today, but every day." With that, a wave of applause erupted through the crowd, inflating the air with a mix of relief and excitement. Jim could see the tension begin to melt from faces that had been taut with fear moments before. The festival wasn't just a distraction. It was a platform, a gathering ground for hope and healing. Mercer's scowl deepened as he realized the tide was turning. "Oh please, talk is cheap," he retorted, trying to regain control. This festival won't fix the budget shortfall or the aging infrastructure. Jim felt a spark of defiance ignite within him. "Then let us come together to figure out what will." He thrust his fist in the air, spurred by the strength of the community gathered before him. "We'll work harder to find solutions together." The crowd stirred with renewed energy, their voices rising in a chorus of agreement. They weren't just here for a day of fun. They were here to claim their voice, their community, their future. It was a breathtaking moment when hope blossomed amidst the shadows of doubt. Suddenly, Jess stepped forward from the grill, her apron dusted with flour and grease. "Why don't we have a community meeting after this festival?" she suggested, enthusiasm brightening her eyes. "Let us create a safe space where everyone can share their ideas and get involved." Cheers erupted around her, and Jim felt a rush of excitement. They were uniting, gathering their strength against the invisible walls the council had constructed. But as the crowd celebrated this newfound purpose, Jim's heart still raced. Relief intertwined with concern. What would happen when Murphy realized they wouldn't back down? Would he resort to intimidation, or worse, sabotage? As the crowd began to disperse, laughter and conversations winding through the air, Jim glanced back at the councilman. The threat still loomed, its dark presence hounding them on this bright day. And amidst the revelry, a chilling thought gripped Jim. What if the council had a card up their sleeve, something more sinister than mere words? What was Mercer planning next? The looming question weighed heavy on his mind. The festival had brought them hope, but would it be enough to face what was coming? The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the gathering as laughter and chatter mingled with the smell of grilling hot dogs and burnt marshmallows. Jim felt a warm wave of camaraderie washing over him as people began to chat, their faces glowing with a shared purpose. He reluctantly turned back to Tom, who still lingered in the center of the park, his shoulders a touch heavier with realization. "Tom," Jim approached cautiously, "you really caught everyone off guard there. I didn't expect you to speak out like that." Tom chuckled, a nervous laugh that masked his unease. "I didn't either, honestly, but it felt right. I just couldn't sit back and watch as everyone fell into despair." "I get that," Jim replied, glancing around at the crowd. They were mingling and planning, ready for action. "But do you think they'll stay motivated? This moment feels powerful, but it needs follow-through." "I hope so. Maybe if we keep the spirit of the festival alive, we can channel this energy into something lasting," Tom said, rubbing the back of his neck as if trying to ease the weight of responsibility resting there. Jess rushed over, breathless and flushed with excitement. "Jim, Tom, you have to see this." She waved her arms wildly, drawing curious glances from nearby festival goers. "The children's booth is a hit. They're painting rocks and sharing stories about their families. It's amazing." With a shared look of surprise, Jim and Tom followed Jess to the activity area. Brightly painted rocks decorated the table, each one a story waiting to unfold. Children giggled as they swapped ideas, their eyes sparkling with joy. "This is it," Jim exclaimed, his heart swelling. "This is exactly what we need to show Mercer. It's not just about fixing buildings, it's about building community." "Right." Jess nodded, her enthusiasm electrifying. "We can showcase this at our meeting. The town can see the heart behind the festival, the genuine connection we all share." As they spoke, an uneasy tension snaked through Jim's mind. Could Mercer really be swayed? Would he acknowledge the strength of their community's bond? Or was he too entrenched in his agenda to see the truth? Just then, a distant roar shattered Jim's hopeful thoughts. "A truck rally?" someone shouted from the edge of the park. All heads turned just in time to see a line of pickup trucks bouncing down the gravel road, exhaust rattling through the air. At the front was a massive display truck plastered with Mercer's face and slogans that set Jim's blood boiling. "What is going on?" Jim asked, moving towards the noise. "Look," a woman shouted, pointing as the truck slowed, parking along the edge of the festival. "They're trying to distract us. Or scare us," Tom murmured, eyes narrowing. The smiling children and bustling adults shifted uneasily, the joyous atmosphere dissipating like clouds before a storm. Mercer's voice boomed from atop the truck, attempting to drown out the festival's cheer. "You folks think this festival will change our town? Just look at the trucks. Real solutions come from strength, not this folly." Anger surged through Jim. The councilman's words twisted their joy, dampening the spirit they'd just ignited. "We can't let him take this away from us," he said, turning to Tom and Jess. "We need to respond together." As the crowd's mood shifted, uncertainty hung thick in the air. Would they push back, face the intimidation head-on, or would fear choke their newly found hope? With hearts racing, Jim, Tom, and Jess stood at the forefront. They needed to rally their community and stand firm, a delicate moment teetering on the edge of love or fear. "Who's ready to show Mercer what we're made of?" Jim finally shouted, clenching his fists. But before he could meet the energy in the crowd with a plan, a figure from within the throng made their way toward them, eyes wide with concern. "I just overheard Mercer," they called. "He's threatening to shut down the festival completely." The crowd gasped collectively, the weight of that revelation sending a shockwave through the gathered families, and Jim felt the tension tighten around him like a noose. Would they hold strong in the face of fear, or would they crumble beneath the pressure? The answer loomed ahead, and everything seemed to hinge on what would happen next. The silence was deafening, each person processing the news in their own way. Faces shifted from elation to disbelief, murmurs running like an electric pulse through the crowd. Jim's heart raced as he felt the weight of their hope teetering. "Shut down the festival?" Tom echoed, his expression darkening. "He wouldn't, would he?" Jess squeezed Jim's arm, her knuckles white with worry. "We can't let that happen. We have to stand up." "Is that what you want?" Mercer interrupted, his voice carrying a mocking tone. He leaned over the edge of the truck, sneering down at the growing crowd. "A festival filled with paint and laughter? You think that's going to fix our problems?" The vibrant colors and sounds around them suddenly felt muted. Jim could feel the joy they had built together slipping through their fingers like sand. But then he looked around, noticed the parents comforting their children, the awkward dance of anticipation brewing in the air. They were here for each other. "Listen up, Mercer," Jim shouted, his voice cutting through the gloom like a shot. "This festival might seem small to you, but it means everything to us. It's about connection, strength, and hope." The crowd erupted around him, voices rising in agreement. "Yes," they chorused, passion igniting in their hearts. "Is that what you want?" Mercer sneered, but the confidence he wore flickered as the energy shifted. "A bunch of rocks and kids? It's more than that," Jess shot back, stepping forward. Her voice trembled with determination. "Every painted rock tells a story, shows us who we are. We're not just here to party. We're here to show what it means to come together. Our town needs this." Tom stepped up beside them, fists clenched but heart open. "We know things are tough, but this festival isn't just for fun. It's a promise to keep building a better place for everyone. Not just a few. I'd rather see 1,000 smiles than your empty promises," cheered an elderly man from the back. Receiving nods of agreement and laughter as the crowd swelled with renewed energy, the tide began to turn. Jim felt a surge of hope wash over him. Could they really take back the narrative? He looked at his friends, then at the families gathered, familiar faces, a community stitched together by love. One of the mothers stepped forward, cradling her little girl who clutched her painted rock tight. "You tell him, Tom. This is our home and our heart. We're not going anywhere." Suddenly, a chorus of voices echoed through the park, each carrying their own urgency, their own stories. Each word pulled them closer, united against the storm Mercer represented. They were on a precipice. Now was the moment. "Let us turn this fear into action," Jim called, his voice steady and warming with resolve. "We won't let fear define us. We will stand strong. A festival like this can ignite change." The crowd erupted into cheers again, hands raised, hearts beating in unison. Jim could feel the shift within him. The fear gave way to a fierce determination that filled the air, but just as the excitement reached a boiling point, Mercer shifted his weight atop the truck and squared his shoulders. "Don't think I'll let this continue without a fight. I have support, more than you realize." Jim's heart sank for a split second as a chill rolled over the crowd. What kind of support? Was Mercer setting the stage for something more drastic? "Together, we can stand against anything he throws at us," Tom said loudly, echoing Jim's earlier sentiment. And just then, another murmur rippled through the crowd. Jim's stomach dropped. A line of shadowy figures appeared from behind the vehicles, glimmering badges catching the fading sun. What now? Jim wondered, his heart pounding. Would they really try to stop everything they had fought for? As whispers turned into anxious murmurs, Jim felt the crowd's energy shift once more. They were still standing together, but now uncertainty threatened to shake their resolve. How deep did Mercer's influence run? Would the community find the strength to hold on in the face of looming opposition, or were they about to face the ultimate test of their unity? The tension in the air was thick, almost suffocating. Jim scanned the crowd, their faces a mix of fear and determination. He could feel Jess's hand trembling against his arm. Tom's resolute expression spoke volumes. The ominous line of officers advancing toward them felt like an unwanted storm cloud, threatening to drench the vibrant colors of their festival. Are they really here to shut this down? Jim thought, his chest tightening. He could feel his heart racing, each thump echoing the uncertainty around them. Mercer's smug grin seemed to grow wider as the officers fanned out. "You think this is a festival?" he taunted, looking down at the crowd. "This is a circus, and I have the law behind me." His laughter echoed, cruel and sharp. "Don't let him intimidate you," Jess whispered fiercely, squeezing Jim's arm tighter. "We have to stand our ground." Tom stepped forward again, voice booming. "We're not just playing. We're working together to heal this town. This festival is about more than fun. It's a lifeline." His words ignited a wave of murmurs that turned slowly into a chant. "Our festival, our lives. Let us show them who we are," called out a familiar voice, as Mrs. Baker, a beloved figure in the community, stepped onto a small makeshift platform, taking charge. "We won't be bullied into silence. Our children need this joy, this hope." Jim felt a spark of hope surge within him. If Mrs. Baker could stand up, so could he. The crowd was growing bolder, voices rising with an intensity that spoke against the rising tide of fear. But then, one of the officers took a step toward the front, startling everyone. "We need you all to disperse. This event has been deemed unsafe." The officer's tone was devoid of emotion, merely performing his duty. Jim felt his breath hitch. Would they really go through with this? Was it too late? His heart raced with the fear of seeing all their efforts crumble. "Unsafe? Look at us," Tom shouted, arms wide, encompassing the crowd. "We are a community, standing together. Safety lies in our unity." As if on cue, hands shot up into the air, rocks held high. Colored stones glinted in the sunlight, a remarkable mosaic of stories, dreams, and hope. "This is our art, our passion." Jim looked around, feeling the magic of the moment. The children, some holding their parents' hands, were adding their voices to the chorus. "Don't take it away," they cried, their innocence piercing through the tension. The officers stopped, glancing at each other, unsure. It seemed like a momentary crack in the wall of authority. Jim saw the hesitation on their faces. Perhaps they didn't expect such a fierce embrace of community spirit, but Mercer was relentless. You're wasting your time. They're paid to do their jobs, just like I am. His voice dripped with disdain, but Jim could see the cracks in his confidence beginning to show. Together, we can create something so powerful, it'll be impossible to ignore, shouted Jess, her voice ringing through the air. What's happening here is about more than the festival, it's about us as a town fighting for what we believe in. Suddenly, amidst the tension, Jim felt a swell of courage. This was more than he ever anticipated. When he thought about what Mercer was trying to take away, it wasn't just the festival, it was their community's heartbeat. Let us stand stronger together, Jim yelled. For our children, our heritage, and our future. We want tea back down. The crowd erupted into applause and chants, a wave of collective strength radiating through the air. But then, a voice cut through the fervor one Jim recognized instantly. It was Mercer again, sharper this time. You think this noise will save you? I've got a plan that you haven't even seen yet. Just wait. The crowd froze, caught in the moment. What plan did he have? Was this just the beginning of their fight, or was something far worse poised to strike? Jim felt a pit in his stomach as they awaited Mercer's next move, uncertainty replacing the rush of hope. Would they stand together against this darkness, or was it just a prelude to chaos? As the ominous threat hung in the air like a dark cloud, Jim felt the world around him swing on a pendulum of hope and despair. Mercer's chilling words echoed in his mind, yet in the faces of his neighbors, he saw determination, a resolve to reclaim their home. Remember, he called out, his voice breaking the silence. This fight is about more than just us. It's about the generations of families who called Willow Creek home. Let us show Mercer and ourselves what we're made of. Encouraged by his words, the crowd surged with newfound energy. Parents clasped their children's hands tighter, young people nodded, and the seniors exchanged knowing glances. Jim could feel the palpable shift from fear to steel-like resolve. They were ready to stand tall against whatever awaited them. Sarah, her eyes gleaming with fiery determination, pushed through the throng and joined Jim. We need numbers, Jim. Let us draw the community out. This festival isn't just a celebration. It's a statement of who we are. Yes, Jim shouted, rallying his friends and neighbors. We can call everyone. Let us spread the word. Tonight, we'll gather here, together, unified, and show that fear has no place in Willow Creek. Jess hopped up on a nearby table, her voice ringing like a bell. Let us go live. We'll broadcast to every corner of the town. Everyone needs to hear our stories. The crowd erupted in applause, the enthusiasm dialing up several notches, dispelling the shadows. Each heart began to beat as one as they mobilized. Families began placing painted rocks, each bearing a message of resilience, along the festival's makeshift borders. Jim watched the colorful stones create a stunning mosaic, a picture of their spirit that could not be ignored. He felt strength radiating from within them, anchoring him against the winds of doubt. And as the sun dipped lower, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, a wave of families headed to their homes, energized and ready to spread the message. Tonight, we demonstrate our unity, Jim declared. Share your stories. Talk to your neighbors. Tomorrow, we show up for each other, not just for a festival, but for our roots. The town's heart beats here, in this park. As twilight approached, whispers of resistance circulated around Willow Creek. Social media buzzed with messages and posts, sharing stories of hope and determination. The town began to wake up and come together as it hadn't in years. The next morning, excitement buzzed through the air like electricity. People flocked to the park, adorned in t-shirts bearing their painted rocks, each telling a story, a collective narrative that showcased their love for their trucks, their families, and their town. Laughter mingled with anxious anticipation as they shared the final plans before their rally. This is it. Jim stood at the center, adrenaline pumping through him, and looked around at his neighbors, voices rising and spirits shining. If we're standing out here today, it's more than just trucks or a festival. We're affirming our legacy and future. Together, they moved toward the center stage where they would gather to speak their truth. As they approached, Jim spotted faces he had never seen before, those once deterred by whispers of intimidation, but now woven into the tapestry of community. Amid the festivity, Mercer finally appeared, flanked by a couple of town leaders in crisp suits. eyes sharp and focused. Jim felt the tension rise, but remained steady. Mercer was there to squash the spirit of Willow Creek, but he mistakenly underestimated the heart of the town. "Listen up," Mercer bellowed, trying to overpower the joyful laughter. "This festival is nothing but a distraction. Willow Creek needs decisive action. We're facing budget issues, and you think this," he pointed disdainfully at the festivities, "will fix anything?" Jim saw the anger boiling behind Mercer's bravado, and the crowd began to murmur. "He's wrong," a bold voice shouted from the back tom, echoing their conviction. "Strength doesn't come from fear. It comes from unity and heart. This festival is our declaration to move forward together." The crowd began to shout affirmations, their chants resonating through the park. "Together, together." Seeing the swell of support, Mercer's brow furrowed. "You're wasting your time on empty sentiments," he tried to retort, but the crowd grew louder, drowning him out. Jim felt empowered, a surge of hope coursing through him, presenting one last push to seal their fate against Mercer's looming opposition. "This is our chance to stand up and reclaim our stories," he shouted, his voice firm. "Willow Creek will not be silenced. Let us speak for our children, for our history." And just like that, the spirit of Willow Creek erupted. Families jostled forward, each ready to share their stories, the tales of fathers teaching sons under the hood, mothers passing down recipes, laughter echoing through the generations trapped within the metal frames of their trucks. As those stories spilled out, the crowd coalesced into a cohesive unit, a powerful visage against the looming shadows of the councilmen. Jim could feel the tide shifting. They were not just fighting against something. They were fighting for everything they cherished. The words of a retired veteran rang out over the noise. "We're not just relics of the past. We are the hands that built and rebuilt Willow Creek. We deserve to be recognized not as obstacles, but as the anchor of this community." His rallying cry pierced any lingering doubt. Faces lit up, eyes reflecting both challenges and dreams. The community embraced the narrative of their choice life, richness, and the spirit of family. Together, they formed a wall of strength, encasing Mercer's attempts to cast them down. The sun was setting, but the warmth of unity poured over them. They shouted louder and louder until Jim could barely hear himself think. They grew. They amplified. In that moment, they knew their love for Willow Creek would guide them through and what lay ahead. The fight wasn't over, but they had found their voice, a place where the pulse of community would live on, a beacon against the storm. As they rallied together, hearts intertwined, they roared in agreement. "This is our home, and we won't let anyone take that away." And that's how the tiny town of Willow Creek ignited a spirit not just of resistance, but of transformation, turning fear into action, weathering the storm together as one united family. Willow Creek shone brighter than ever, holding its stories, its laughter, and its resolve close. This was the moment they had fought for, a legacy not just worth preserving, but worth celebrating. And as they marched into the future, they knew their voices mattered. They knew they could weather any storm. So long as they did it together. Don't leave without doing something important. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss these inspiring stories. Hit that like button because it really matters. Seriously, it feeds the algorithm. Comment below with your reactions. What did you feel as this story unfolded? Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful transformation. Don't wait, not even 1 second. Join the movement, support the channel, and connect with the heart of our stories.